Washington mornings on the Mall. 105.9 FM. And AM 630. WMAL.
7:37 on WMAL. Good morning, Brian.
Good morning. Coming up at 8:37, we got Dan Bongino coming in. He's a former Secret Service agent. You also remember he ran for the U.S. Senate. But because he's a former Secret Service agent and because the inaugural is going on and because security is such a concern, we thought it'd be a good day to have him come in and talk about all that. Brian Wilson and Larry O'Connor.
Yes, and joining us right now is the governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia, a man that many, including myself, hopes to run for president 4 years from now. Maybe he'll be standing up there taking the oath of office.
And he can make that announcement today if he cares.
Exactly. Now's a really good time. Governor Bob McDonnell, are you ready to announce your intentions to run for president today on Inauguration Day?
You guys are pretty optimistic here on a Monday. You must have had quite a weekend.
That is not a no.
Hey, I'm just looking forward to this one today, and I think we're ready for it. I've been working with Governor O'Malley and Mayor Gray and all the regional security people to make sure we're prepared, and Virginia will do its part.
Well, part of the concerns today, of course, is security, but another big part, and we've been talking about this for the last few days, is getting around town. When you've got an influx of this many, hundreds of thousands of people, close to 1 million people coming in, it is a pain to get around. And I know that transportation is a big part of your agenda. You've already done some things to free things up, but you made a pretty big announcement this week for your new transportation agenda going forward. Why don't you tell us about that?
Well, I probably don't need to convince anybody in the Northern Virginia area that transportation infrastructure investments affect your quality of life, the time you get to spend with your kids, the ability to move goods to market, everything. And so we've got to do better. And I've proposed something that I think is economically sustainable and has a good chance of passing. It involves a couple things. A big use of the general fund. Transportation is a core priority of government. We ought to use some general funds, a little under $300 million a year by year 5. We're suggesting converting the existing gas tax to a sales tax. The gas tax is in a long-term decline because of inflation, alternative fuels, and other factors, and that seems to make sense as a long-term way of growing money for transportation through economic growth. And then a fee increase of about $15 on the registration fee, still putting us about the middle of the pack as far as states nationally. And then also drawing down some new money from federal funding, federal law changes that we expect. So all total, it's about $845 million a year in year 5. We'll also have some significant transportation reforms, improvements at VDOT, a lockbox to make sure transportation funds don't get raided. But all this together will do an awful lot for significant projects from Dulles Rail, improvements all over the region, and I think it's got a decent chance to pass. We have about 70 business groups now on board, and I think we have a good chance of people actually approving it this year.
Now, your concern is that the way it's set up right now, it's a dwindling source of income and will not meet the needs. That's the real concern here, is it not?
Well, the current structure for transportation depends largely on the gasoline tax, both the state and the federal gasoline tax, and a smaller amount on the existing sales tax in Virginia. But just to give you an example, just inflation, because it's a flat 17.5 cents, it's a volume-based tax, inflation has eaten up about 55% of it. So it's only worth 45 cents on the dollar of what it was in 1986. And binder, which is the primary ingredient for asphalt, has gone up 350%.
Yeah.
So we just got a math problem. But you got alternative fuels. You've got CAFE standards, meaning the miles per gallon is going up, and people buy less gas, and therefore the gas tax is going to be a long-term decline. So my thought is, look, let's be a leader. No state's done it yet, but let's lead and find an alternative source of funding. We already use the sales tax, and so killing the gas tax, bumping up on an essentially revenue-neutral basis, the sales tax seemed to make sense.
Okay, the other thing I see here is that if all of these things go through, that you're going to dedicate $300 million to sort of reduce the tolls that are coming on the Dulles Toll Road because of the Dulles Metro Rail project.
That's true. That's a piece of the dedicated funding would be for Metro. We did about $150 million last year. This $300 million, which is would then total about $450, which is similar to an investment we just made in the Hampton Roads area, will help to abate these tolls. I'm very concerned, as you know, about the performance of MWAL. We've worked for 2 years to try to get that board to run well. They still got IG deficiencies they've got to correct. But what we cannot have is this constant escalation in the tolls on the Dulles Tollway to be able to pay for rail to Dulles. So we need greater efficiency, and we also need to make some additional state investments. And I'd be willing to consider doing that, and that's why we've suggested this amount of money.
Governor McDonnell, your brother, your partner, your border friend, Governor O'Malley there in Maryland, who also everybody is saying is going to be running for president. Wouldn't that be fun? He's pushing for some pretty serious gun control measures there in Maryland. I'm wondering what your opinion is of what's going to happen there in Maryland with what he's trying to push, and what measure. And listen, everybody seems to be believing that they've got to do something in wake of the horrific tragedy in Newtown, Connecticut. What do you think a solution is? Does it include security in the schools? Are you interested in pushing armed security for Virginia schools?
Unfortunately, we have had a similar tragedy in Virginia, as you know, about nearly 6 years ago at Virginia Tech, and it's just heartbreaking and senseless that someone could do such a thing, especially to young people. What I did is, within a couple of days, I issued an executive order to begin a task force, which convened just a week ago. And we're focusing really on what works. How do we defend these young people in the schools? How do we improve school security? What are the mental health law changes that we can make? Do we need more school security officers, particularly in certain areas of the state? So we are looking at all of that. We're going to have recommendations by the end of January, and I will make some recommendations into the General Assembly after that. But it's heartbreaking for most people around the state when they look at 20 young lives in Newtown being snuffed out by this deranged gunman. I mean, it begs for a call to action. But you don't want to just emote and do things and restrict people's Second Amendment rights when it may have nothing to do with.
Is that what O'Malley's doing?
Kids.
Is that what O'Malley's doing?
Well, I don't know what he's doing. I haven't paid attention. I'm focusing on what I need to be.
You got
able
your
to
own
do in
state
Virginia.
to worry about. There's no doubt.
Right.
Well, let me ask you this, though. During this gun discussion that we're having in America, something happened on the floor of the Virginia state legislature where a bonehead walked in with an AK-47. He's a member. It was unloaded, and he brandishes this weapon on the floor of the Virginia House to make a political point. What was the reaction in Richmond over that stunt?
Every 5 or 6 years somebody does something like that. I've seen those pictures. They're headlines grabbing. People know they're going to get their picture in the paper, and that's I think the point of it. And what we need really is a serious discussion about what policies, if we put into effect, have a significant likelihood of protecting these precious young kids in school. I had 5 kids graduate from schools here in Virginia. We owe them security and safety, but brandishing arms on the floor of the House to make some political point really doesn't do it.
Let the record reflect that Governor McDonnell did not take issue with your description of this legislator as a bonehead.
Yes. Okay.
You're on board with bonehead? All right. Thank you, Governor, for joining us
He's
today.
a politician. He can't ask him to do that.
Really appreciate it.
Thanks,
Enjoy the
Governor. It's always a
inaugural.
pleasure. Come back, please.
All right, and I hope everybody commemorates MLK Day here and remembers the great work of Dr. King.
Absolutely. And don't forget to make your presidential announcement right here on WMAL. It's 7:45
Yes, sir. Thank you.
on 105.9 FM and AM 630 W. He's running. He's running for president.